Hey friends, I'm sorry that we're not going to be able to meet in person tonight, but I'm glad we got this opportunity. I'm standing out here in the field at Rick and Jane Massey's house. They are the ones that let us keep our horses here, and we are so thankful for that. And we've just brought this bale of hay you see behind me, so they'll be well fed, and you may be able to see the snow coming down. It's kind of neat that the snow is coming down and I'm outside because the Super Bowl is on Sunday, as you probably know, and it's going to be outside in New York, and there is some concern that the weather may play a factor in that game. One of the things a lot of times we see at those football games is somebody standing up, usually in the end zone, with a big sign that says John 3:16. I have to admit, I kind of like that. I think that's kind of a neat thing. It doesn't give some little phrase that might be a cutesy little phrase that's some kind of a witness or something that might be offensive, but it's just a Bible reference. And it makes me think that the person that does that trusts God so much that if whoever reads the sign in the stadium then goes and gets a Bible or Googles John 3:16, they can read God's Word, and that person just trusts that God can speak to them through John 3:16, and I think that's neat. Well, we've been working our way through John this year, and so we are now in the third chapter. So I do want to talk a little bit about the third chapter, and particularly about John 3:16. If you're like me, you memorized it when you were a child and don't really have that much trouble recalling it. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. And we know that, and we've heard it all of our lives. But when we think about John 3:16 in the context of the third chapter of John, we see that this really is written in the context of fear. Nicodemus has come to talk to Jesus, but he has come at night. Nicodemus is a Pharisee, and he is afraid that if his other Pharisee brothers knew that he was coming to see Jesus, that they would disapprove, and they might even kick him out, and so he's afraid. And so he comes under the cover of darkness to talk to Jesus and to try to figure out who is this Jesus person. And as a part of that conversation, Jesus tells him that God sent him out of God's tremendous love so that he wouldn't have to perish. He wouldn't have to be afraid, but rather he could have everlasting life. Now, it's probably really good that we're in a horse pasture right now. And here comes Seven, one of Sarah's horses right over here, because horses are prey animals. They are animals that live their whole lives in fear. You know, deep down inside of them, they realize that they eat grass and other animals eat them, and they have to be really, really careful. And now he's trying to eat my coat here. And so they live their lives in fear. I was riding one of our horses one day down Seed Orchard Road, and we were having such a good time. We were just cantering along, and I was having a great time. And all of a sudden, he spooked, and he jumped about 3 feet off to the side. And all of a sudden, I'm hanging on for dear life, just barely clinging onto his mane, hanging off the side of the horse. Well, he had spooked at a T-shirt. It was just a T-shirt lying there on the side of the trail, but it scared him. Deep down in his brain, he thought it was a cougar or a bear or a wolf that was going to eat him, and so he jumped away from it. And horses spend their whole lives in fear. Edge, one of our other horses, he's the one right here eating, he just came over to this pasture after being away for a few months. He's been at another farm giving pony rides and horse lessons and that kind of thing, and now he's going to winter over here. And when we brought him back in this field a week or so ago, he had to assert his dominance. He wanted to be the top horse. And so there were a couple of kick fights between him and the other horses, and one of the things he really wanted to protect was the hay that was here in the middle of the field. And he wouldn't let, particularly one, Sundance, one of the horses, eat the hay. He just kept him away from the hay, and Sundance had to kind of sneak up to it, and Edge would chase him away again. Now, there is plenty of hay for these three horses, and we are going to keep bringing them hay all winter long. We're not going to let them starve. But he was afraid there might not be enough hay for me. And there's something that's very human about that too, even in the context of food, because we know the planet produces enough food to feed everybody. I think it's 2 times over, and yet people in our world starve to death because those of us who have more hoard it, and we're afraid maybe I won't have enough, and so we don't share it. And so we read in John, though, that Jesus comes to take that fear away from us. For God so loved the world. Later in one of his epistles, John tells us that perfect love casts out fear. And we find that perfect love in John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son. And whoever believes believes in him should not perish. There's no reason to be afraid of death because they will receive everlasting life. Now, my family was watching the movie the other day, The Lone Ranger, the new one that has Johnny Depp in it. And I know it got some bad reviews and whatnot, but I thought it was cute. I thought it was funny. I thought it was in line with kind of the spaghetti westerns that we sometimes see. And there's all these crazy stunts in there they do with the horses. The character of Silver, the Lone Ranger's horse, is wonderful. He's his own kind of comedic character himself. But at one point, Tonto says to the Lone Ranger, "You are a spirit walker. You cannot be killed. You're a spirit walker." And later in the movie, when the Lone Ranger has to do this really dangerous thing, he starts saying to himself, "I'm a spirit walker. I can't be killed." And when he says that, that gives him the courage that he needs to go forward and do the dangerous thing he needs to do. Well, truthfully, we Christians are spirit walkers. Jesus begins this whole passage by saying to Nicodemus that the Spirit of God is like the wind, and we don't know where it comes from, and we don't know where it goes, and yet we can feel its presence with us, just like we can feel the wind. We can feel God's Holy Spirit. We are spirit walkers. We walk by the Spirit and in the Spirit and with the Spirit. And because we are spirit walkers, because we are disciples of Jesus Christ, we cannot be killed because we have already inherited eternal life. And so as you go through this evening, I hope you are warm and snug, maybe beside a nice roaring fire. That's my plan for later tonight. I hope that you will consider this question. If you knew you couldn't be killed, how would you live your life? If you had nothing to be afraid of, what would you do? And particularly, if you had nothing to be afraid of, how would you be faithful to Jesus, faithful to the one who calls you and who says, "Because of me, you can have everlasting life"? And don't only think about that, but all of us, let us commit ourselves to living that out. Maybe even tonight or in the next day, doing something that is courageous, because we know we are spirit walkers and we cannot be killed. I hope I get to see you all next